Now, at the top of the show, I showed you how the Trump derangement syndrome is kicking in again, with critics suggesting that Donald Trump is undermining NATO with these comments.
One of the presidents of a big country stood up and said, well, sir, if we don't pay and we're attacked by Russia, will you protect us? I said, you didn't pay? You're delinquent? He said, yes, let's say that happened. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay. You got to pay your bills.
Now, the truth is, of course, that in his own unorthodox and provocative way, Trump's trying to bolster NATO by getting the Europeans to do more, as he did when he was in office. But that reality doesn't seem to quieten the hysterical critics of Donald Trump. I started my chat with US commentator Kristin Tate on that topic.
That's exactly right. This is just more pearl clutching by people who have Trump derangement syndrome. They are constantly outraged, constantly appalled, and their constant outrage and state of being appalled has just left the voters with fatigue. So it has no impact anymore. And even just average Americans who aren't particularly plugged in understand that American taxpayers are pulling the weight of all of these countries, by the way, that simultaneously want the weight of the American military behind them at all times. And Americans are sick of it. They're saying, hey, what about our open border? How come we're giving $75 billion to Ukraine under Joe Biden, and we get a measly $4 billion for our own southern border that is wide open? People are sick of it, and the vast majority of Americans support Donald Trump and his comments about NATO.
Yeah, I love that term, pearl clutching. But you're dead right. I mean, the Trump critics don't do themselves any favours, because they just wind underneath his wings. Any ordinary person, anyone with any common sense, knows exactly what he's doing there. He's saying to the NATO nations, stump up, do more for yourself. So he's not undermining NATO. He's trying to strengthen NATO. And he actually did that when he was in the White House himself. He got a lot of those countries to spend a bit more on defending themselves. So their interpretation is virtually the opposite of reality. So no wonder Joe Biden, meantime, is having a hell of a time. I couldn't help but notice the latest ABC News Ipsos poll. It shows that 86% of Americans think that Joe Biden is too old to be president. Now, granted, more than half of those think both candidates are too old, given that Donald Trump's only 4 years younger than Joe Biden. But as Joe Biden is having all sorts of trouble remembering names and remembering issues and remembering countries, and to have 86% of the population saying you're too old to get another term just underscores how dire this situation is.
What's shocking to me is not that 86% of Americans think he's too old. It's that 14% think he's not too old, Chris. Who is that 14%? I mean, it is so clear that this is a president who is well past his prime. He is losing his mental capabilities. There was a press conference a few days ago that was just so painful to watch. He's mixing up names of countries. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He stops speaking in the middle of his sentences. This has gotten so bad, Chris, that even the New York Times now, it seems, has turned on Joe Biden because they realize this is a disaster, and he is clearly not capable of this. This is a quote from the New York Times, an editorial author. He, quote, simply should not be running for re-election. Another quote, this is a political disaster. This is supposed to be his biggest cheerleading outlet.